Welcome to Hannity. Tonight we're exposing how your government has gone absolutely wild. Now let me explain. Now for weeks we've been covering the story about rancher Cliven Bundy in Nevada and how armed federal agents and snipers began impounding his cattle, all because they were grazing on public land and eating public grass. Now last night on this program we also introduced you to Seal and Andy Barry. Now they're a couple who lost their dream cabin in Colorado simply because the government decided it wanted their land. Why did they want their land? For quote, open space. Now, the couple tried to fight for it, but they told me it was pointless and that they ultimately had to give up their dream cabin for just a fraction of what they paid for this. Watch this.
They originally offered $30,000, and we were able to get $115,000, but we had almost $80,000 in legal bills.
$80,000 in legal bills, but you paid $550,000 for the whole thing, right?
We get to keep part of it, but the 10-acre parcel that they're taking, we finally felt like we just had to, when their price came up to enough to cover our attorney fees, we had to take it. We have 2 kids in college. We couldn't keep fighting.
All for open space. Now, their story is just heartbreaking. And now there's a situation tonight in Texas involving the Bureau of Land Management. Now, this is about to get very, very messy. Now, the Texas Attorney General, Greg Abbott, who'll probably be the next governor, wrote in a scathing letter to the BLM director, remember Harry Reid's good buddy Neil Cornsey, that he is deeply concerned that his agency could seize a 116-mile stretch of land along the Red River. Now, Abbott wrote, quote, as Attorney General of Texas, I am deeply troubled by reports from BLM field hearings that the federal government may claim for the first time that 90,000 acres of territory along the Red River now belong to the federal government. He wrote, private landowners in Texas have owned, maintained, and cultivated this land for generations. Now, despite the long-settled expectations of these hardworking Texans along the Red River, the BLM appears to be threatening their private property rights by claiming ownership over this territory. Now, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more that we'll hear about this story in the days to come. But here's what we all need to keep in mind. This is not new. For years, right here on this program, we've been exposing government overreach and eminent domain abuses. For example, let's take it back to 2006. Right here on this show, we introduced you to Lou Anzalone. Now, he's a World War II vet. He was being kicked out of his home after living in that home 46 years. Take a look.
I lived in here since the first time I bought it. I renovated, I winterized it, I did everything. And I will bless this house because I'm able to be 89 years old.
Thank God.
And my wife is 89. Now the city decides that this is a nice place for someone else. So they're throwing us out.
By the way, this was not for a road, a school, or a hospital either. Now, we also met a great-grandmother by the name of Norma Peterson Fluke in 2005. She was also going through government gone wild in a similar situation. Take a look.
Family has lived here 65 years. The business has been here 56 years. And now the town has come and deemed us unfit to be in this town and want to put us somewhere else, but we're centrally located for our business. And without this property, we would go out of business.
Just pathetic. And then there was this heartbreaking story of World War II vet Johnny Stevens. Now, back in 2005, doctors told him that he had lung cancer. He was given only 2 years to live. And while he wanted to spend his last days peacefully in his home, well, the government, they wanted his house. Why? To build luxury condos and townhouses. Why? So they could get more tax revenue. Look at this case.
I don't have too much time left, but I had intended to live out the rest of my life in that little house I got, tend my garden, and live in peace. As it stands right now, I don't know where I'm going or what I'm going to do.
Just sad and very pathetic. This is your government gone wild. These are American citizens, some heroes, and they're fighting their last days on this earth, fighting for the property they've lived in for decades. Now, unfortunately, we can go on for hours with similar stories that we've done, but tonight we're looking for a solution to this mess, and here to help do just that is Fox News senior judicial analyst, our friend Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, welcome back.
It's nice to be with you, Sean. No matter what horrors we're talking about, it's nice to be with you.
No, I appreciate it, but you know, this couple that I interviewed last night from Colorado, Clive and Bundy, whether you agree he owes the money, doesn't owe the money, why is the government treating its citizens this way when there's a simple answer that you brought up on this very program in the Clive and Bundy case?
The simple answer for the government against Clive and Bundy is to take the judgment that a federal judge has determined the Bundys owe the government and file that judgment in the local county courthouse. And then when Mr. Bundy passes away, before the property passes to his inheritors, the government will get its judgment plus interest. Or if Mr. Bundy, before he passes away, sells the property, the government will get its judgment plus interest. Now, your question is a profound one. Why won't the government do that? Why, instead of doing that, have we seen this massive show of force with sharpshooters and snipers, with some guns aimed at Mr. Bundy, at his family, at innocent protesters and friends, even at the news media? Because the government, instead of using the least force necessary, which is what the rule of law is using the most force possible, because they want to intimidate the Bundys. I'm convinced he cannot be intimidated. They want to intimidate others, and they're probably a little unsure of themselves, Sean. And so they're compensating for that lack of surety, of certainty, with this massive Stalinistic-like use of force. 200
plus armed agents, as you say, sharpshooters and snipers here. We've got dead cattle as a result of all of this. Dogs were used, and then we had people hit with stun guns by some of the BLM officers there. I didn't want to see the officers hurt. I didn't want to see the protesters hurt, and it seemed all for nothing. But this isn't an isolated case. We did a whole series on eminent domain, some of which we highlighted here tonight.
Right.
The government is taking property from people in Colorado because they want open space. They're taking property that a World War II vet has lived in for 46 years so they can get more tax revenue for townhouses and condos. Really? Is that what the law says about eminent domain? I thought it was for schools and roads and hospitals.
Unfortunately, the law has changed, and it has changed in a totalitarian direction. Let me take you back to the framing of the Constitution. When the Constitution was written, Jefferson and Madison argued the government should not have eminent domain powers, that the only moral, legitimate transfer of real estate was that which was voluntary on both sides, a willing buyer and a willing seller. When the government takes your property against your will, no matter what they pay you for it, it is not a willing seller, it's just a willing buyer, the government. And often the government gets the property at a bargain basement rate.
That's outrageous.
However, before the Kelo decision of about 10 years ago, Sean, the government more or less, not exclusively, but for the most part, used property that it took for roads or schools or hospitals, legitimate public purposes where every human being could enjoy the new purpose of the land.
And they were duly compensated in those cases. They got fair market value, or maybe a little above fair market value. Wasn't that the standard back then?
Yes.
All right, let me ask you this, because we have this case now in Texas, and we're going to get into it in the next segment as well, but where the BLM is now claiming this property on the Red River. They're going to just take those acreage? The
BLM made the colossal mistake of going on the wrong side of that river. You and I know Greg Abbott. Even if he were not about to become the Republican nominee for governor of Texas, and he'll make a terrific governor.
I agree.
He is the tenacious defender of personal liberty and property rights as the sitting Attorney General of Texas. You will see a vastly different reaction in Texas than you saw in Nevada. Right. In Nevada, you saw lip service from a governor who sided with Bundy. In Texas, you will see legal action and maybe even force from a state government that simply simply will not permit the feds to steal the private property of its citizens.
Texas is not going to give up without that fight there. And why would the government precipitate that when it's not their land? Last question. Let me put up on the screen, Judge. If you look at the latest percentage of land that is owned by the federal government as of 2010 and the Congressional Research Service, look at the percentage they own in Nevada, 81%, Utah 66, Idaho 61, Oregon 53. And you go right on down the list. Why does the government own all of this land anyway?
Sean, I'm going to make a statement that the government will consider outrageous, but almost everybody, Pete, watching us now will understand it, and I expect you'll appreciate it. The Constitution simply does not authorize the federal government to own any of this land. All of it is being held unconstitutionally, and all of it should be returned to the private property owners from which it was taken or to the states in whose borders it exists. Period.
I totally agree with you. And not only that, they can't afford to manage it anyway. You know, when you think of the Bundy situation, it's about, you know, Cliven Bundy's cattle eating government grass and not paying for it, and then snipers and sharpshooters surround the ranch. Judge, good to see you. Great job. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Sean.